Right, let's jump into some controversy a little bit. So this started doing the rounds very, very quickly. So apparently, let me swap over here real quick, because I am curious about this. Apparently, John Haidt and Holly Longdale, which we like both of them. They are very, very awesome people who I've spent time with and have single-handedly, seemingly reshaped how WoW is going. Attended something called GDC, which I assume is Game Developer Conference, and slides from this event got leaked. Is apparently what happened. Slides from this event got leaked.
Welcome back.
And in this, they revealed
a report for you. I'm going to be presenting information.
Or something like this. We have WoW sub numbers. Right. For anybody who hasn't seen this yet, because I got sent this and I was like, I obviously have to save this till stream. That's a bad picture, Mike. Hold on, Mike. Let me help you out there, buddy.
The details were.
That's better. There you go, Mike. So, for anybody who doesn't know the answer, because I don't know the answer yet, what do we think it's at? It's definitely up. People have gone back to WoW from FF14 now the story's done after the big usurper. 2 million. 2 million seems short with Classic. I would expect somewhere around 4 to 5 where I'd expect maybe more with Season of Discovery and Hardcore being a thing. So I would be guessing somewhere around 4 to 5 is where we're at. But let's see.
World of Warcraft subscriber trends.
Hi, Belle.
This is real data from a Blizzard presentation that took place at GDC this.
Right, this was an event for companies. Okay. So we had the executive officer of Nintendo there. We had, obviously, Sven from Larian, who was there just talking mad shit, probably. Finji? I don't know who Finji are. Rebecca Saltzman, CEO and co-founder of Finji. I don't know who Finji are.
Year, in fact, it took place like a day
writer
or two ago.
from...
Now, I'm doing a
story
like this, talking about a thing that's kind of leaked out. It's got to be genuinely newsworthy. It's got to serve a public interest. And given that we are talking about World of Warcraft,
yeah, Troy will be there for like how voice actors need to be used. Probably in an anti. I wonder if he was there in an anti-AI standpoint.
Public eventually. GDC talks always end up being available after the fact in the GDC vault, though often at a decent bit of a delay. Now, me saying this does make it all
okay. So the full conference is going to be revealed,
and in a way, it is.
I got to be pausing a bit because this is going to get interesting. But okay, so the whole thing is to be revealed, which means Blizzard knew that going in, that this would become public information. That's worth noting at this point.
We are dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, but mostly this is fascinating. This charts World of Warcraft's success, its downward trend. It even confirms its lowest point in modern history. Do you want to know when WoW is at its worst? You're going to find that.
It has to be Shadowlands. It has to be. It has to be Shadowlands. There's no way it's not. It has to be. BFA will be bad and Shadowlands is worse. Today.
And we even have an internal breakdown of why the Shadowlands expansion failed.
No
and
shit.
By the end of this analysis,
all right,
you will have the most accurate possible.
He's showing the jailer. Okay, they're gonna blame the jailer. Oh, I'm so in
right now.
I'm so in.
A subscription number for right now. We will also know sub numbers for its worst periods of health, and we'll be able to compare our workings out to Blizzard and Activision Blizzard's prior statements. I cannot wait to get into this, and if this kind of thing is tickling your brain, getting it whirring.
I'm right with you, Mikey. You Irish little love sausage.
Mission is to teach you
Hit me up.
web development.
No, sorry, Mike. Boot.dev. Boot.dev/Bellular. Rock and roll. 25% off.
Keeps you. Yeah, there you'll see all the cover. First, we've got a graph of subscribers. This is something we've not.
Instead, we saw historically higher churn. Okay, so there was a graph before this. Subscribers, rolling average, expectation versus actual. All right, so we're going back to Legion. We're skipping WoD. Okay. We're skipping WoD. So Legion... I can't remember what the Legion numbers were. Coming down here. So Legion had what you call normal drop-off after Legion. That makes sense. BFA did not do as well as Legion did at launch. Interesting. That's really interesting to me as well. Is coming off the back of how successful Legion is regarded and considered, is BFA did not get back up to Legion numbers. So this would probably be the 0.3 patch. Obviously, I'm going off various dates. So this would be the 0.3 patch of Legion. Then people came back for a little bit. And then BFA did not do as well at launch as Legion. Then Classic hits. Now, right. Okay. Interesting. Shadowlands does not take the dip that BFA does in terms of overall, but it's being hard carried by Classic. Which is exactly the way they are planning their business model here. So if Shadowlands was standalone, I have to believe this graph would have dipped down to here, but that's not the case. And this is what we talked about last week, interestingly enough, is that Blizzard is creating this environment where it doesn't particularly matter which version of WoW you're playing, you're still within the sub diagram. You're still in that pot of subscribers, and it doesn't matter. Because I have to believe, although Blizzard would never tell me, and I did ask Ian this, is that this dropped dramatically if it was just Shadowlands. And the ratio of people playing Classic to Shadowlands was probably so dumb. I remember when I asked Ian about this, and I said to his face that Classic was carrying retail, and he went, he's like, but I have to believe that was the case. I have to believe that's the case. So Shadowlands, what's interesting though is Shadowlands and Classic almost hits the lows of just BFA. Almost around here, right? Like round here, this is slightly higher than BFA's lowest, but that's with Shadowlands and Burning Crusade just came out during that time. So I interpret this as Shadowlands being so fucking bad. So fucking bad. Like toilet water. Absolute toilet water. Interestingly enough, okay, if I'm reading this correctly, yes, I am. Expectation. They expected the Burning Crusade to do better than it did. Because it had a little peak and then people quickly dropped out. I wonder if that, and this is all theory crafting right now, I wonder if this is because, at least in my mindset, the Burning Crusade is where the gameplay changed from Classic being dogshit slow to actually getting pace and being engaging. And when I played the beta of the Burning Crusade Classic, it very quickly dawned on me that was not the case. And it probably wasn't until like Wrath or Kata that the gameplay started to pick up in pace. Because I know I played Burning Crusade beta for like an evening and gave up because I was like, this is spoiling my memories of the Burning Crusade. This is actively ruining. Or, alternatively, had by this point World of Warcraft Classic gone from being a fun return to the old times and having fun doing Molten Core stuff to the sweat-laden sauna swimming pool of beards that Classic became, where it was just it kind of got rid of the fun, which was a huge amount of feedback I got from the Classic guys, is Classic is just not fun anymore. Everyone's treating it like a world first race all the fucking time. And if you're not min-maxed to the arse and doing every last thing and collecting and farming 25 fucking potions all the time, that people don't want you. And it's all GDKP runs at this point. Like, essentially, we're paying Classic by buying gold, which is absolutely what was happening, and just paying guilds to just consistently run us through raids to collect purples to do that again. So I would guess it's a combination of both of those things, is that the shine had worn off, because Classic was the big one. Obviously, look at this upsurge in Classic, like, absolute lunacy. But the shine had gone, and TBC wasn't as good as people remember. It might just be the steeper drop from Shadowlands making TBC just flatten out the curve. Yeah, I imagine there was a huge surge back, but Shadowlands is so... That's correct as well. This looks like a tiny bump, right? But your classic players and a little bit are offsetting the fact that Shadowlands was probably down here. If we could separate them out, I've got to imagine it was down here and came up here. This is also the lawsuit era. Absolutely. We're going through that as well around here, where Blizzard's coming under fire and all these, the boys club shit that was happening there for years is also happening. So in some ways, it's probably not as bad as they expected. What's, I think, was the misplay here, and I really do remember us talking about this pre-Dragonflight, I want to say. And it had been on a live stream, so I can't really find when it happened. I think it was too early to try and tempt people back. They expected a huge bump up to at least Shadowlands levels for Dragonflight. In fact, the fact that if this projection is accurate, they expected Dragonflight to do better than BFA and Legion on launch. Obviously, that's with the combination of Classic. I think was too much. People are still, to this day, not recovered from the burns that are BFA and Shadowlands. And Dragonflight was too early to try and tempt people back in. They were too burned. They were in the height of, certainly those who went to 14, they were in the height of the MSQ. They were enjoying a story they'd never seen before in the MMO. They had moved on to greener pastures. I think it was way, way, way too early to be like, and we fixed it, come back. Like, it was way too early. Their marketing was a little too much because it was unproven. Dragonflight needed to be a return to fundamentals, which it was, and getting things in place, which they have done. But the marketing was like, please come back. And I think it was way too early to ask for that. Way, way too early. They have to do something wild to pull me back like Extreme. I think what WoW needs to do, and I don't know if the War Within is going to do it. WoW needs a new feature that's like, I want to play that. Because I don't think they have that yet. I don't think they've come up with it with a new feature, which is like, that's something I really don't want to miss. Not a story. No, the story, no matter what you tell anybody, even if the story is awesome for War Within, people won't believe it until they see it. That's not going to get people to buy it. They need a new gaming feature that is literally like, oh, shit, that looks fucking awesome. I need to go there. And it needs to not be something that be good crapped on from miles away. And housing would be one. Something like that is like, we're doing housing. Something along those lines. Something huge that people want to come back to. Because Dragonflight's got this problem right now where everybody's saying it's good. And as far as I know, I'm not actively playing Dragonflight right now. I was playing Season of Discovery. It's got more people returning to it than ever before. I'd be interested to see what the graphic... In fact, it does seem to be climbing, unless this is the Dragonflight launch. More people are playing Dragonflight right now than were kind of at launch, weirdly enough, because people are drifting back. You know, they've finished the FI14 story. They've been in seeing Guild Wars 2. They're now, like, drifting back into World of Warcraft because there's all kinds of shit going on. So it seems to be rising again. And everyone's saying it's good. It's really good. But it's not got that key feature. It hasn't. It just does not have that key feature that's like, you can't miss out on this. It's got its raids. It's got its story. Okay. It's fine. But it really doesn't have anything that's... how are you missing out on this? You don't want to miss out on this. It's worth coming back for this. What else would I draw from here? Yeah, I think this was a bit of a delusional expectation. It was too early. Way too early to expect that. War Within, maybe. But here, not so much. Not so much. Man, I really wish I could see the ratios of Shadowlands to Classic. Ooh, but considering apparently we're going to talk about Shadowlands anyway, they kind of get that.
In a decade, Blizzard stopped reporting them during Warlords of Draenor because, yeah,
there's no y-axis. How are we getting numbers?
Damn big. Anyway, you see the numbers be pretty good for the launch of Legion. We see Legion lose players, then flatten out. BFA bumps us up, but not by as much as I thought, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too. Yeah, Mike's correct here. I would have thought after Legion, why would that have been the case? Legion is considered to be a great expansion, especially towards the end. Interesting. I wonder, roll with me a bit. We always expect people to drop out relatively quickly from a new expansion. That happens all the time. However, from this graph, right, people left quicker during Legion than they did during Shadowlands. That's interesting. Whether or not it's because it took a little while for the average player base to realize how fucked Shadowlands was. That could have been the case. Like, hey, this Covenant business is actually turbo tits, and Torghast is now... Torghast is really fun, Oh, God, get me out of this fucking prison. I hate everything about it. Legion's launch was not good. And this is something that is always overlooked by people remembering Legion fondly. Its launch was not good. It was the first time Blizzard actively lied to us. And I don't care how they try and twist it and try and say that wasn't our intention. Bullshit. You straight up lied to the fucking lot of us. You straight up lied to us about these legendaries and how they were going to work. And it became incredibly fucking obvious that you were lying to us. What was the lie? Blizzard basically pitched their everybody gets a legendary idea as the more you play, the more you get. And they kept it that simple in the marketing. However, the players actively discovered that that was not the case and you were hard capped at 4. Some people bugged and got more, but generally speaking, everybody was hard capped at 4. What people found is that if you got a bad 4 legendaries, it was actually well worth you re-rolling your character and doing it again on a different one. And that's what was happening at the top end a lot, is like, I got my 4, they're shit, I should re-roll my character and start again. And a lot of players did that because it was very obvious, despite what Blizzard was telling us, that you did not get more than 4. And then probably 2-3 months later, Blizzard admitted they had capped it at 4. And they were going to unlock the cap later. And their idea, I think, I might be paraphrasing here or misremembering, is they didn't think people would hit 4 that quickly and nobody would really notice. Whereas the Sweats found it in like 2 days because it became apparent that Court of Stars was dropping more legendaries than average. And so players spent 25 hours in Court of Stars just farming it over and over and over and over again to get their legendaries. And they were like, yeah, I hit my 4, so I'm re-rolling, and I didn't get the good one because, of course, it's Blizzard, so the legendaries were massively imbalanced. And if you didn't get the good one, you were practically dog shit in the eyes of a serious player. So I wonder if that's what dropped people out. Legion's launch, not amazing. Yeah. So that's probably a part of it. Because BFA drops off pretty damn quickly because I think that's when people got into Islands and Warfronts and they were like, what in the fuck is this shit? What is this? But they stuck around a little longer for Shadowlands. I think it maybe took a little longer to set in there, but interesting.
Immediately after BFA, we do see awful months. And what we're actually looking at here is a rolling average of World of Warcraft.
Question. What would this graph have looked like if they didn't pull the trigger on you think you want it, but you don't? Take the fact that they pulled the trigger on a feature they said they weren't going to do. So what the fuck does this graph look like if they didn't pull the trigger on something they were pretty adamant that the players did not want? It would have been... It saved WoW in many ways. Like, I don't think they would have gone bankrupt, but there's a strong argument that Classic really fucking saved WoW. Really saved WoW. Because this graph would have just gone down and down and down. This peak would have been probably here. Like, if you take this out of the equation, take Classic out, which is obviously carrying a lot of subs for the game. What's interesting here is that this doesn't show the revenue. I would imagine the revenue for World of Warcraft is just a straight line up, if not even fucking steeper, with all the microtransactions they have now across the games. So I think, like, you know, tokens and whatever, like, the actual revenue of the game goes up, but the actual player retention is just in the toilet completely.
Subscribers. It does not get any more real than that. Now, at the time of Classic's launch, we heard that it just about doubled WoW subs, and this graph absolutely does back that up. Classic then was clearly helping as we were moving into Shadowlands, of course, given the pandemic.
To put it lightly.
It just did incredibly well, but that was followed by crippling failure. And when we zoom in, we see the unbroken line is the actual subs, the dashed line is the expected subs. You can see Shadowlands dropped like a rock.
Not surprising.
And unlike Legion and BFA, Classic existed during those initial quarters of Shadowlands.
Exactly.
Looking at this, you may think that TBC and Wrath Classic didn't help much. Remember, TBC, Wrath Classic, and regular World of Warcraft all show the same subscription. So even if TBC was doing pretty decently, that could very much be cancelled out by the performance of Shadowlands.
Correct.
And of course, it's very much not a surprise when we see this labeled as historically high churn. We all knew that. The difference here is we're hearing it from Blizzard directly.
Yeah.
Now, Next, here's another slide for us to look at, and this
Oh.
one gets really interesting.
Hit me.
This is a breakdown of why...
Pause. I don't want Bell's opinion before I read it. Okay. Right, we're looking at Shadowlands. Can't see the title. Afterlife. Okay, so this is why did Shadowlands fail? Okay, the Afterlife setting wasn't accessible. What does that mean? The Afterlife setting wasn't accessible. I need your help on this one. I'm not sure what that means. Too law-breaking, dead is death. The machinery of death, the inner workings of death. So just people couldn't relate to it? Is that what they're talking about there? It's just not relatable that we're in the afterlife, considering we can just walk backwards and forwards and shit. Law-breaking, wasn't believable, couldn't get into it. I can buy that. Okay, that makes sense to me. I honestly, obviously, I'm not a big story guy when it comes to World of Warcraft, but I could see that for people like, wait, so we're dead, but we're not dead, but there's ghosts within the afterlife, kind of, but these people are alive, blah, blah, blah. The new antagonist wasn't developed. Yeah, we'll agree on that. I think we can agree on that, yeah. At least they're recognizing it as like the jailer was just bad. It was just a bad idea, and trying to make him a big deal was just a bad idea. It didn't work. Nobody gave a fuck. Yeah, that's fair. Well-known story heroes were diminished. Oh. Yeah. I did anybody like the Anduin play out there? The Anduin Arthas sort of crossover. I mean, they're using it now. Obviously, there's shades of it in the War Within trailer, which are used really well. But at the time, it felt desperate to me. It was like, we need, I wish we could have Arthas back because he was badass and the jailer sucks. So it just felt a little desperate as like just trying to turn Anduin into Arthas. Yeah, the Garrosh stuff, yeah, not great. Sylvanas, obviously poor. I think they missed a chance for Sylvanas' entire character. Yeah, for sure. Can't we be the heroes? Arthas poorly used, Garrosh poorly used. Yeah, Uther. Yeah, some big names came into it and just didn't do anything. They ruined Arthas' legacy. I wouldn't go that far for me, but I mean, there's a lot of people who care more about the story than I do. But I agree with all this, actually. Yeah, this is fair. I mean, obviously the antagonist, nobody gave a shit about the jailer. He was just he was the guy who had the loot on him. Who the fuck he is, who cares? The afterlife setting not accessible. If you're a lore guy, I could totally buy into that as well. And yeah, the same for the stories. Okay, gameplay. The systems didn't evolve with player expectations. Yeah, you fucked Torghast up. This whole fucking tree was turbo shit. I hated this thing from day one. Absolutely hated this fucking thing. I think we did probably, me and Finn did so many videos on how stupid this system was. Absolutely ridiculous. Does anybody remember the launch where you couldn't get the good ones until like 8 weeks in, but then if you played a certain fucking class, you got your really good ones like with the first week? Or the play was actually to use one, and then till week 4 when you had to swap over. It was just so fucking dumb.
Do you remember we did the video on the number of combinations?
Yeah, the number of combinations.
I think the number ended up at like 16 million.
16 million combinations. It was something like that, yeah.
You factored in, what was the conduits?
The conduits, yeah, because of course, the conduit power. Oh my god. That fucking conduit power. Jesus Christ, man. The worst of this, this is bringing it all back. The fucking worst of this is when they realized this thing was turbo shit, and so they turned it over. And I remember when Finn, called me, you're not going to believe what they've just done. I'm like, what? And he's like, they've just turned them upside down. They haven't changed what they do. They just literally turned them upside down and put them on the same background. It was fucking bizarre. It was bizarre. It's like, what are you... So fucking dumb. And then, of course, Torghast became a fucking endless prison where the goal came to be as out of there as quickly as possible. And then the gold. How many of you played Shadowlands, started looking at the legendary base pieces? 250,000 gold to get a 5 item level upgrade or whatever the fuck it was. What in the fuck is this? what in the fuck is this? And if I want decent legendaries, I now have to do Torghast like 12 times for months. I just want to play my character, man. That's all. I just want to play my fucking character. That's all I want to do. Sometimes, like, if you were a multi-classer, oh my god. God, go fuck yourself if you're a druid. Go fuck yourself. Oh, you want to play bear sometimes? Well, you got to grind Torghast for this one. Oh, but sometimes you play resto? Well, you got to stay in there and do it for this one. You got to play Moonkin? You got to... Oh, you enjoy playing different specs and stuff? Well, fuck you. Fuck you. You're going to live in Torghast forever. Just horrible. Borrowed power. Yeah, I mean, borrowed power sucks. Well, not always... Right, borrow power is a bit of a nebulous term. Like, trinkets are fine. Like, little bits of borrow power are fine. But, like, everything being borrow power is too much and it sucks. Yeah, tier sets are borrowed power. Tier sets are fine. Like, in the most part, tier sets are fine. Little bits of borrow power, totally okay and expected and fine. But your whole character being borrow power is too far. Not enough variety in gameplay. I think that's reasonably fair. So what did you have in Shadowlands? You had daily quests, more dailies, and then it was M+ and PvP. And they really, if I remember right, I'd have to go back, but this is what my memory's telling me, is that they kind of made world quests totally useless. There was a lot of world quests that were like a little bit of gold or a little bit of renown. Like little tidgy, tiny amounts and relatively crappy gear. It was a real shame that the Covenant's individual things didn't super pay off in any way. Like, Kyrian had that weird boss mode. Maldraxxus had the building of the abominations, but I did that for a few days and I got really tired. Oh god, the Revendreth Tea Party. The mushroom, yeah, the mushroom for the fucking flower people. Oh, that tea party thing. Holy. Yeah. Oh, the gardens with the seeds, which all has potential, but like, you did this better in Mists of Pandaria. That's what was always so confusing about that stuff, is like, you just did this better ages ago. So why have we got this version? So confusing, so weird. Like, we've had this before, but better. I don't get it. Why is it worse? Okay, community. Gaps in content. I don't remember that because I kind of was drifting out by that point. Did we have long content droughts in Shadowlands? I can't remember that. Lack of transparency. Didn't feel heard. Is this for me? Is this for me personally? Hello? This is going to go really badly. I'm just letting you guys know before the game even comes out. Nah, it's all right. It'll be fine. Hello? Doing my best over here. I'm screaming into a void. This is going to fucking suck, Blizz. Ian, they had a vision. Like, I've got a lot of respect for Ian. I like Ian a lot. And he did listen to me. It's just that he didn't agree. And it felt insane. It felt insane. It's like, how are you not seeing what I'm seeing? Because it's so obvious. I feel like I'm looking at an elephant in the room, like an actual elephant, and you don't seem to be seeing it, but I see it. It's right there. It's so obvious, and it sucks. Like, let's just not do this. We hear you, but I'm not doing anything about it. Where's that one interview you did with Ian? I did 2 over the course of Shadowlands with Ian. One was to address these concerns where the infamous ripcord line came up, where they had a plan to drop a lot of this stuff, but didn't do it. To be fair, though, let me extend an olive branch here. If they fixed Covenants, that wouldn't have saved Shadowlands. It would have been better, but it wouldn't have saved Shadowlands. Like, there was too much other bullshit. Like, fixing Covenants was certainly like one of the argumentative things that we talked about, because it was one of the bigger deals for sure. But it would not have stopped the Torghast grind. It wouldn't have stopped these stupid dumbass trees. It wouldn't have stopped any of that stuff. Like, everyone focuses on the Covenants for Shadowlands, but I know is like just flipping the ripcord on the Covenants would not have saved that expansion. There was too much going wrong in too many different directions. It was like it was built on a house of toothpicks. It was all cracking and crumbling. Yeah, it was rotten from the ground up. I agree. The Covenants was the big one because that made totally no sense. It didn't even fit in with the story of the game. It was absolutely absurd in all respects. Like, I really hated that story. It's like, thank you for opening up our tomb. Like, you did that tweet we made where it's like, thank you so much. You are the savior. The primal may one day return. Wait, you chose Kyrian? I hate you now. You're the worst person ever. But also, when I need you, you must come back and help us and save the world again. But you're not allowed inside our house anymore. But we need you. And also, thank you for building our house. Like, what is going on? Why would this ever be a thing? This is so fucking dumb. This is absolutely the stupidest shit ever. So bad. Okay. Let's go.
Shadowlands didn't work in their estimation. They say Afterlife setting wasn't accessible, new antagonist wasn't developed, well-known story heroes were diminished.
Yeah.
I mean, does that match how Shadowlands felt to you? Certainly does for me. And this, remember,
he's got a smug face on him.
The closest that we will see to Blizzard just saying straight up, this whole thing was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it. We ruined our iconic heroes. The villain sucked. As for gameplay, they say it lacked variety. Borrowed power was wearing thin. Systems were not evolving. And that I get. They were just iterating the same thing again and again and again. And when we think about variety, I mean, hey, 16 months in the Sanguine Depths. Does that sound good to you? Vitally, they call out community specifically, saying gaps in content, lack of transparency, didn't feel heard.
We tried.
It's all shit that we said,
tried.
Right? But this
we
is
did
great.
our
And look,
best.
from
I will
what
stand
can
by that
glean,
till the day I die.
A lot of
We
Team
did
2
our
members
best.
were not happy at this period of time. There's a phrase I could say referring to some cliques, but I will not say it because it would be revealing. And
I've said it multiple times. I would give anything to have been in the meeting where they're discussing these ideas, and you just know so many people are like, this is bad, we shouldn't be doing this. And other side of the table saying, actually, I think it's going to pay off. I think people are really going to enjoy having this meaningful choice where they feel locked into their characters. Like, no, they won't. No, that's not how they're going to feel. It's a combat game. That's not how they're going to feel. Yeah, they will. Like this, like fucking backwards and forwards that was going on between the devs.
What's going on? And another side is there has actually been quite a lot of staff turnover since the Shadowlands. Anyway, TLDR, it was a little bit of a shit show, and I think that absolutely
a little
did
bit of a
show
shit show
in their public communications. The question then for us is, does the contents of this slideshow feel like it's been internalized by the team? I mean, literally, in some ways. Game-wise, I very much think so. The state of core class design is better than it's been in years. Mythic Plus is at an all-time peak. I've got a report coming out on that next week.
Cool.
By the raw numbers, it is literally the best it has been through all of this current WoW expansion. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to some numbers.
Give me another
slide. So we're
slide.
taking a look at the launch of Dragonflight, and that must have been a terrifying thing for them. Its launch did not bring them back to their earlier Shadowlands numbers. That is dire, and it reflects an abnormally weak marketing campaign, one of their worst expansions.
That's what we just talked about before.
An expansion
Agree.
that felt almost unexciting by design, which I kind of understand. How can you have a massive villain arc right after you've tried to pull the jailer? Right after you've wheeled out developers to claim in marketing materials that the jailer's demise is in fact the closing of a book that began in Warcraft 3. That was completely insane. And feature-wise, it didn't have any insane hyper-marketing feature like artifact weapons. And there was even
dragon riding was the
mismatch
big
with
thing they were
audience
selling on.
expectations with the new race. The Drakthir were a take and playable dragonkin that were nothing like what Warcraft as a franchise had led people to desire or expect.
Is that true? I have no idea what the context for that is. I thought Drakthir were pretty cool. Yeah, dragon riding was the big thing they were selling it on, but I don't know. I really liked the Drakthir. I guess that's from a lore. The Drakthir are lame. They're cool. I can't be Dragonborn Paladin. Drakthir is furry shit. I wouldn't say that by any means. Dragon Swan, what if big ones? I can see that.
For all of that, and indeed because of some of that, it did focus on the essentials. Class design,
I like them from a
talents,
gameplay
public
standpoint.
events, basic traversal, content cadence. Let's see then what investing in those core foundational things actually gets you in your game. Looking at the Dragonflight sub numbers, we see that initially pretty mid, actually. The initial content seemed to do okay. Not amazing. It clearly did have a lower churn rate than what we would have expected.
Oh
But
shit,
when
the
things
graph
get
goes
wild,
on. There's more. All right. Excellent. So, Season of Discovery definitely helped. Hardcore helped a lot. Cataclysm Classic coming later on and War Within coming there. So, yeah, this is what I would expect, actually. We're getting back up to... This is good side. They're getting back up. Record post-launch stability and growth. Yeah. This is good. This is exactly the feeling I've had recently with people drifting back into World of Warcraft. This is exactly what I think was happening. This is good. And they're keeping them in this WoW ecosystem. They're dotting around. It's like you're invested in the Apple franchise. This makes sense. Okay.
Is mid-2023 and beyond. So what happened? Well, Classic Hardcore, both unofficial and official, kicked off. There was a revamp of gearing in modern WoW, and that I cannot overstate the importance of, because for so many people, gear literally makes them go and play the game.
Number go up, baby.
Fix up gearing, people start playing more. Surprising. BlizzCon then was huge. It got the vibes right, and instead of a woohoo, happy trailer, we got something with meat, with emotional depth, with compelling vocal performances, amazing animation, industry leading, and of course, Season of Discovery, which was launched quite shortly after. You would be forgiven for assuming that this spike is all Season of Discovery, but some numbers suggest that's not all the case. As an example, we've just published our report of Mythic Plus activity to our members and our analysis of
I love that trailer.
Numbers.
That excited me more than anything. That trailer.
The core thing, though, is that Season 3 of Dragonflight, in terms of the number of runs done, is demolishing Season 1
I will take
serious
WoW. I like my serious WoW. And comical pandas and shit.
Numbers that are essential.
I'm not going down this road with you, yeah. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people prefer the Mr. Pandaria trailer.
Draws us
I disapprove.
Comparison. Right now, World of Warcraft has as many subs as it did partway through the classic spike back in the days of
Wow, they're doing really well.
Just shy of Shadowlands' flash in the pan, and it actually looks as strong as Legion.
They're at Legion levels again? Fucking hell, they've got to be smiling in that office. Assuming this is correct, corporate graphs are always... right? It's like when we get the processor performance graphs from AMD and Intel, and they're like... corporate graphs are always a little sus. But considering this is a developer conference, and it's John and Holly, I have a lot of faith in John and Holly, but... yeah, we've got no numbers, but I think we did in Legion.
Does it feel like that, though? Does the community feel like that? The answer is no, and there are many reasons, but a big one is fragmentation.
Yeah,
Classic,
they're all over the
Season of
place.
Discovery and Modern have all got different player bases. We literally don't see each other. We don't watch the same YouTubers and watch the same Twitch people, right? So together, we're producing Legion-like subscription numbers, but it doesn't feel like that because we're actually logging into
I don't think Blizzard gives a shit.
Warcraft. And that, I think, is an important factor. Modern World of Warcraft is, I think, very much on an upswing. But modern WoW is still short of Legion, because Legion produced these numbers by itself, without a Season of Discovery, without a Classic. But still, I truly believe it is on an upswing. Basically, what they need to do is the hard work and just making stuff. Look, Dragonflight was a great version of World of Warcraft.
They could do all sorts with Classic and different game modes, like they're doing with Plunderstorm.
The types of play, the reward schema, massive
They've tapped into something they didn't realize was going to work out as well as it has.
Warcraft, the franchise, Warcraft, the emotion is, Warcraft, the world, the setting. It's no wonder that they are leaning into more core Warcraft things with the War Within, and why they are setting both Midnight and The Last Titan in fan-favorite continents. So clearly, modern WoW, as a subset of World of Warcraft, has a long way to go, but I think is absolutely on the upswing.
That was a weird edit
now
there,
it's time
Mikey.
to talk about some numbers. Okay, we cannot do exact ones here, but we can.
Oh, we're guessing.
Try.
All right, how are we guessing?
Our last official number is 5.5 million. That was a few quarters after they plummeted from the Warlords of
Okay, so we've got to assume the graph is
to
accurate
10
then.
million. And guess what? Based on what they did say in prior earnings calls, we can get a workable subscriber number estimate for now that is basically
you
as
cheeky
accurate as it
Irishman.
can do. So, Warlords of Draanor's low was 5.5 million. When Legion launched, a misunderstanding...
WAD's low was 5.5 million. It should have been so much less. It should have been so much lower. so much lower. I'm amazed. It should have been so much lower. The WAD's low was 5.5 million. It should have been lower. Did Legion boost WoW to 10 million?
Standing with a journalist.
The rating was good,
number
but not a lot of
10.1
people
million
like
subs being
rating.
reported.
It's too
Blizzard said
hardcore
that
for
was
them.
false. They didn't provide a number though, but enter this, the Q1 2017 earnings report. So that's Q1 17. Legion released in Q3 the prior year, and this is what it says. Legion's overall performance is slightly ahead of the prior expansion. Now, this is obviously not perfect data, but, you know, 2 to 3 quarters post-launch, WOD was about 5.5 million, so what is their definition of slightly? If it's only 5%, then that would put Legion at a similar point in its cycle at 5.8 million subscribers.
Holy shit, are they up to like 7 or 8 million subscribers?
Okay, if we're at 5.8 million 2 quarters after Legion launched, then you just draw a horizontal line. You see that we hit about 5.8 million with the launch of Guardians of the Dream. But since then, it's hard to say because the y-axis isn't labeled, but if you are to assume that the y-axis starts at 0 and you count 5.8 million pixels, you work out a subs per pixel value, and then you do the maths, then we get 7.2.
That's an assumption. Have we got something to back that up?
Right now, there and abouts. And yes, this is
how
a
would
rough
we
estimate,
do that?
But guess what? We'll be able to prove that the y-axis actually does start at 0. So while this is rough, I think you can see the fairly clear logic here, and at least it's a pretty damn good ballpark. But let's get a bit spicier. What were WoW's worst numbers? Well, 4.07 million, there and abouts, midway through BFA, and during Shadowlands, even with Classic helping, 4.5 million. One thing that actually does make me feel good about these numbers is the scale, though, because in the earnings call, again, covering Classic's release, Blizzard said it was the sharpest growth in history and that they essentially doubled their subscribers. And if you go back to the annotated chart, you can see from 4.07 million to 8.27 million, which basically is a doubling, so I'm very confident that on that graph,
that's fair.
It's 0 on the y-axis.
That's fair.
That is its starting point. And that I actually really do respect. A lot of companies will try to fudge with data by not labeling a y-axis or being a bit funny with it. That they really do seem to be just giving out the actual trends.
Well played, World of Warcraft
that's
team.
honestly quite refreshing. So I suppose props to Holly and John. They evidently felt that actually they're in a strong enough feeling position that they can show this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
they
that's
obviously
some
knew
numbers,
this was
but
going to
there
go
are other
public.
vital things, because for Blizzard, it's all about revenue per user. They use the store a lot more now than they used to. They pull future revenue forward using 6 and 12-month sub deals. But the thing is, WoW is probably over twice as expensive to develop. I mean, literally, the headcount is like over.
Well, sub numbers are only a part of the picture. The actual revenue that WoW's making is way higher than it used to be.
The expansion
with all the fucking mount bundles and shit.
So
Pets,
I think clearly,
people buying fucking all sorts of shiny
like
things.
Cosmetics and the token.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are doing quite a bit of work. Because yes, ultimately the World of Warcraft team is, I think, just shy of 600 people. It really is quite massive. And that is far larger than it was at the past. And say, you know, the likes of Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King, it had a team that would look tiny compared to the current one. And of course, that's when they had 12.1 million subscribers. So that is basically it. I cannot wait
these
for
weird
this
little
talk
jump
to properly
cuts.
get out there so we can actually just
I'm angry,
break it
Chris.
down, go through all the detail. I think Holly and John doing a talk like this is really, really cool. Of course, at GDC, this is a case where they will be doing a presentation to fellow developers. Like, you don't just walk into GDC. Those tickets are pretty damn expensive. I should know because one of us is over there right now doing GDC things, working out stuff for our next project. Now, to be clear, he did not go to this talk. We learned about this through sources, shall we say. But knowing that this will be going public, not super far in the future, I kind of feel comfortable sharing it because I think, especially right now, the community could probably benefit from just a...
all right, let's go back. 7.25 million. That's way higher than I thought it was, and GG's to those. That also kind of fits. That seems pretty reasonable. Like, I agree with Bell here and how he's arrived at these numbers. That fits. That's very, very, very respectable. Very respectable. A lot of, well, that's, we keep saying you're within the ecosystem. Like, Season of Discovery is probably petering out a little bit now. I know I'm kind of done with where I wanted to be in Season of Discovery. My character has a couple of things to get to be like bis, but like it's not really worth it. And then people buggering off to different things. I don't understand a curve on TBC and Wrath of the Lich King and a big jump in Season of Discovery. So what's happening here is this is after Classic comes out. So BFA obviously is tanking and would have continued to do this. But then Classic comes out and Classic boosts it back up because obviously the launch of Classic was such a massive, massive community thing. People around the world were begging for Classic. It's finally here. The hype around it was astronomical. You remember I was in Las Vegas for the Classic launch doing a big event with tons of streamers. It was a huge, huge thing. And so a lot of players would have resubbed for that and also moved on from BFA to playing Classic. Like, practically everybody with a World of Warcraft investment was playing Classic when it came out. A lot of people drop out. Obviously, they remember just how shit Classic is. Sorry, Classic Andes, and I know you're already angry at me about my Season Discovery video. But Classic is great if you love Classic, but it's also got a lot of problems. It's very, very slow. Its questing is atrocious. It's terrible. It's really bad. There's a reason it got left behind. But either way, it has a nostalgic feel and people love it. I'm fine with that. That's great. So, stuck around, played Classic. I wonder if this coincides with the launch of, like, AQ, Naxxramas, things like that. These extra peaks. How many people are leaving between raid tiers? It'd be interesting to see. I'm not sure what this bump is here. Then the new WoW expansion is coming. Shadowlands. It's surely... What was the mantra at the time, WoW players? They never have 2 expansions back to back. At the time, we all copiumed the fuck out of ourselves that it always goes week 1, good one. Then we get a weak expansion, then we get a great expansion, right? We were huffing that shit like cocaine. It was like, it can't be as bad as BFA. They would never do 2 bad expansions back to back. Like, we were snorting that shit up. And oof. Oofers. But Shadowlands looks as good as it does because it's also including, remember this is the overall WoW sub number, so it's still including everybody playing Classic. So the reality is this graph probably would have come down here and gone like this, right? Something like that. If it wasn't for the fact that Classic exists and people are playing Classic and they're doing all the shit in Classic. So the reality, if it was just the standalone retail version of WoW, it probably would have dipped even lower and then maybe peaked a little bit and then down even further. I imagine just, like I said, I'd love to see the ratio of players, but I have to believe that Shadowlands would have actually on its own been down here, like 2 million, which is what we... Didn't we do some math on this, Chris, and that was accurate for Shadowlands? About 2 million? Didn't we do that at some point? Based on that, we pulled a lot of information from the scraping websites, and it looked to be about 2 million. Didn't we do something on that?
Sort of. We made an assessment based on Mythic Plus participation.
Yeah, we got a lot of we got some spreadsheets from Reddit.io, and then there was that other website that was scraping Covenant choices. Do you remember we did that?
Yeah.
And it was about 2 million, right?
It was quite low.
Yeah, it was very low, because I remember us talking about it. I think it was.
But, I mean, obviously it was flawed data.
Yeah, it's flawed data. It was never going to be accurate. It was the best guesswork we could do. But we did a lot of research on that, and it seemed... I think we found that because you could base it on Armory Covenant choices.
Correct.
That's what we got information from, right? So it was... Like, obviously some people have a lot of alts and things like that, but it was floating around that 1.8 to 2 million number, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was something like that. So I think, yeah, it probably would have been about 2 million for just Shadowlands, but then obviously there's a little bump. And Burning Crusade comes out, which also bumps up the numbers. Wrath of the Lich King doesn't seem to do much of anything.
Where's Hardcore? When did that come?
There was another slide that had Hardcore on it, I think.
Yeah, because even the unofficial one would have even been bigger.
Yeah, it looks like... I wonder if the entire luster of Classic is wearing thin for people.
Well, I think, like, just Classic, yes. I think it's things like Season of Discovery, things like Hardcore, it's the twists that are going to get people, right?
If you consider that for many, Wrath of the Lich King is the height of World of Warcraft for a lot of people, like, massively popular. It was the highest point of subs ever in World of Warcraft was Wrath of the Lich King. You would have kind of expected a little bump, but I wonder if the reality... a larger bump than this. I wonder if the reality of how Classic is playing out versus expectations is really took the shine off it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Wrath is when I joined.
Oh, can you link it, Review?
So I'm very nostalgic for Wrath.
Have you played... Well, you're very nostalgic for Wrath, but have you played Wrath Classic?
No.
No.
Because I can't be asked.
I can't be asked. Yeah.
I mean, there is a nostalgia for it, but it's not something I necessarily feel the need to repeat.
No, I understand that.
You're going through kind of all
Yeah, that's why I didn't play, because I've done it I did it every single day since the game came out. Like, there's nothing for me to find in the classic experience, other than disappointment, honestly.
Like, what was that fucking Kept the Old Kingdom for Justice badges? Is that what?
Thanks, Review.
You know?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I mean, I have no intention of replaying a game that I've played before for years. Hi, John! Okay, so that's not got hardcore in it. Hardcore wouldn't have appealed to a lot of people, I don't think. Okay, here we go. Can we maximize this? Okay, so, yeah, Wrath is a surprisingly small bump. I would have expected higher. The normal classic is the bonus that being lost in retail. Wrath is still in retail, yeah. I literally did Wrath when it was new. Yeah, because the problem, I guess, Classic is running into...
perfectly matches the massive drop-off at that point in Shadowlands.
Mm-hmm. I would guess the problem with Classic is it's now catching up to being not as long ago as WoW Classic was. It's actually getting more recent, even though Cataclysm is still, 10 years ago? You are enveloping more and more players into stuff they have played before. And coming through. Because I imagine a lot of Classic players never... the people who were here... I bet there was a fair chunk of people who never played Classic. Cataclysm 15 years ago. Exactly. So for them, it was the first time they ever got to play the original World of Warcraft. Right? And experience it. Like, I never got to do it. I'd heard about Naxxramas. I'd heard about the Ashbringer, the Corrupted Ashbringer, and all these events and things like that. So you would have had that. But as you go forward, obviously that's less and less people... depending on when they started, because you're just moving up to less further away, obviously. Hardcore is a little bump, but nothing mega. Season of Discovery is a huge bump. Good idea for Season of Discovery. Yeah, very cool. People gatekeeping and optimizing the fun out, the easiest content in Wrath Classic. Yeah. Especially the questing. You can go and do most Cata quests on live. True. Yeah, this is more content that you can actually just go and do in the retail version as well. Yeah, I don't think Hardcore would have a wide appeal. Or people would have tried it briefly, died, and gave up.
Good times all around.
That's what would have happened with Hardcore, is people would have tried it, died to a level 3 fucking bat or something, and just like, yeah, I can't do this, I'm leaving. Or it's just annoying or whatever. What are you talking about? I got like, I did pretty fair for a first little attempt there. I only died once, and it was in the 30s. That's alright. That's alright, we did pretty well. We certainly didn't dip after the first bat or anything like that. That wasn't how it went down. Died to a sausage roll. That's how I prefer to remember it. Yeah, for sure. Season of Discovery does surprisingly well, and more people are returning to play Dragonflight. Very cool. Very, very cool. I don't think Kata's going to provide the biggest bump then. If we're looking at the trends of Burning Crusade and Wrath, probably Kata's not going to do anything too much, I wouldn't have thought, compared to War Within. But they could be, if War Within does well, they could be looking at the largest bump they've seen since Legion. Which is pretty cool. The curve without classic numbers. Is this made by you? No, you see, it is going up with Dragonflight. You see, this is not accurate. They are going up with Dragonflight. For sure. They are going up with Dragonflight. I'm not sure that Dragonflight's launch would hit... I would actually change this. I don't think Dragonflight hits Shadowlands amount of people, with still people holding out. Probably about here. But I would imagine this actually goes like this, honestly, and starts rising again. Probably not to us the sales version, but lower and then back up now. It's like going up. Whether War Within. Shadowlands was also during COVID as well. Yeah, true. Yeah. WoW is not back yet. It's not back yet. It's doing well, but they're going to lose. It's kind of like doing an FF14 MSQ stream. It's like, yeah, you've had the bump from it, like with Classic, but that's kind of wearing off now. So something will need to replace that, which is no doubt why Season of Discovery came about when it did, because they could see Wrath of the Lich King didn't quite do what they hoped it would do, so the luster is wore off on this product, so now we need Season of Discovery to come up with something else to play with until we get to War Within. So you can actually kind of see their internal strategy here. I kind of wonder, and I would ask this, is Season of Discovery in direct response to the lack of interest in Wrath of the Lich King. They did not see the... It was already low at Burning Crusade, as you can see. It's a little hop up, but obviously it's probably actually way higher than this makes it appear because Shadowlands would continue to drop. So I imagine that the Burning Crusade was actually considered to be very successful, if I was to guess. But Wrath didn't seem to get the work done. This is also... maybe he did. Hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. Wrath of the Lich King looks like a little bump, but how low was Shadowlands at that point? Because realistically, this could actually be a huge, huge bump. It's just that without Shadowlands doing anything good, because Dragonflight comes out here, right? This is still in the Shadowlands era. So for all we know, actually, Wrath of the Lich King did extremely well. And it really pulled them out of the shit with where Shadowlands gone. It could have been that case. It could have been the case. Wrath would have been the lowest of all the bumps. We can't tell. This is not representative of the reality of how many people went in. Because I have to imagine the baseline retail one is continuing to lower. So the classic bumps are less and less each time. Or the foundation that classic is bumping off is less and less each time. Either way, seems to have kept players from TBC. Yeah, we don't quite know. We don't quite know. That's too much detail to read from this graph because we've really no idea. It could have been that Shadowlands lost a lot of people, but then it kind of leveled out. And the people who liked Shadowlands were fine. There are a lot of people who really like Shadowlands. I don't know why, but they exist and stuck it out till the end. Like, they were like, yeah, it's, you know, for me, it's fine. So I'm not going to... I'm fine. I'm happy enough. I'm doing whatever I want to do. I'm playing my alts. And then the 0.3 patches come. We can swap covenants now. We can do all those kind of things. I've already leveled all my renown up, so I can just do whatever. Like, that could have happened. We don't know. Only Blizzard knows that. Oh, there are definitely people who look back fondly at Shadowlands. Again, I don't know why. I don't know why, but there you go. It is what happened. It is what happened. It happens. People do that. People do that. Yeah, I would like to see the previous sub numbers, but yeah, pretty good. I was talking to 12 with sub drinking Shadowlands. Mistake I'll never do again. Yeah. One thing I think is clear, they know the value of having a lot of WoW variants. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of ironic this landed now, because we were talking about it all last week. WoW is doing a very, very, very good job of keeping people within Warcraft. And I think they're going to expand on it more. Like, we've got the Plunderstorm thing now, which is going to go away in the next 3 weeks. I can see them doing more of this. I wouldn't be surprised to see a MOBA thing coming. Not Heroes of the Storm, but like a little MOBA temporary event coming. I could see a lot of that coming in the future. Little side events to get people in, and little game modes based with just little WoW characters doing whatever temporary. I could totally see that coming. I think 6 weeks total, right? And we're like two weeks of Plunderstorm, something like that. So next 4 or 5 weeks. So Plunderstorm is temporary, yeah. Plunderstorm is a 6-week event. They should have made it free to play. I was talking to Chris about this morning. I don't think they knew how this was going to play out with Plunderstorm, so doing it for the WoW subs only right now makes sense. I think if they do another event, then it's going to be free to play. I would imagine. I think that's probably the play. Is this first one? Keep it within the WoW ecosystem. It might go horribly wrong. That's why they released it on A service first, right? So they can fix it. And then next time, they've learned a lot from this one. One, I don't think these events will be secret again. Because that didn't work out, because as soon as people found out it was PvP, they like lost their fucking minds. Or they built up expectations in their head to be too big. So they'll probably announce it earlier exactly what it's going to be. But probably will make it free to play in the future for people to jump in and do things with. It's also perfect with consoles. Yeah, exactly. Like, they can now create... There's so much Warcraft, they could create this bubble of being in Warcraft. And keep people there. And the sub's a sub, ultimately. Problem is that there's so much good game that can be played 200 hours that I don't even have time to play Dragonflight. I didn't even start it. Blizzard's probably fine with that if you're... For anybody who stays within WoW. I mean, you gotta remember, it's a subscription service, right? And look how gyms work. They thrive. You know, in many ways, gyms don't even want you showing up because that's less equipment for people to use. Like gym memberships and subscription services, a lot of these ones, they rely on you paying your sub and like not even playing. Although they would like you to play to spend microtransactions. But how many people, I guess what I'm saying is, how many people do you think have a WoW subscription and haven't logged in for like several months? Because they've been busy. Not that they don't want to play, so they keep their sub going, but they haven't got time to log in or whatever. Right? Or they bought a 6-month sub to get a mount that they might want to play in the future, and they just don't log in anymore, right? I imagine there's a fair few people who have a rolling subscription with World of Warcraft and barely log in. Too lazy to cancel. Yeah, they give mounts for the 6 and 12 months. Yep, they do that. Don't call me out like that. I'm just saying there's a lot of that going on as well. That big dip after Shadowlands is exactly when Endwalker came out. Subs moved to SE. Yes, they did. Yeah, for sure. This is like...
for office rat jamming.
Rat jamming. It was the perfect storm for Squeenix. Shadowlands was atrociously bad. I will stand by that. Absolutely astronomically bad. If you weren't into Classic, you're not coming back.
Yay for office rat.
Thank you so much, Turtle. And also, Final Fantasy XIV was hitting its heights on the story, right? Which people got to play in. But Final Fantasy XIV has lost that edge now. With a lot of the players. And Endwalker is... I mean, a lot of people have talked about it. Endwalker hasn't done a great job of keeping people playing day to day, and that's why I think a lot of people have drifted back into WoW at this point. A lot of people have drifted back over. Yeah, Endwalker's not done a great job of that, which is what Yoshi P just talked about, is we need to be working on these things. We didn't have the good day-to-day gameplay that people wanted from Endwalker, and people looking what to do. And so people are like, well, there's Season of Discovery to go and check out. I'm technically not playing retail. I don't like retail or classics going on. So it's kind of edging back. I'll be interested to see whether other MMOs start trying to create this kind of environment of miniature game modes. It's like the Fall Guys event in FF14. It's great temporarily, but it needs more and more regular than that. FF14 needs to give me more FOMO. FOMO works, right? We can bitch and talk about it all we want, but FOMO works, man. FOMO absolutely works.
Sub for the
There's a reason it exists. It absolutely works. FOMO totally works. It's something that's very effective, and it works. But I've got to say, I'm happy for Blizz. They're doing well. Besides other IPs not performing as they would. WoW's doing a lot right now. I'm happy for him. And I put a lot of it on Holly. Because John's been there for a very long time, but it seems to be Holly who's led the way on this. And she's such a lovely person to talk to as well. She gives a shit. I really like Holly. Holly is Giga Chad status for me. She really is. She's done so much since she came into the game. Bring back Heroes of the Stormy Cowards. They could start baking that into World of Warcraft. Can't say that about Metzen. He's only just come back. Like, Metzen is not responsible for this. Metzen might do something wonderful, but he's not responsible for where WoW is today. That's Holly. Holly's the one who's been leading this charge. Ian's had more free time, seemingly, to enjoy his job than I've seen in years. Years. Like, seemingly, I don't know whether the delegation process has changed or whatever, but Ian seems to be enjoying his fucking job again, which is great.
FFFC imploded due to terrible leadership changes, 2 years of being in it. So I don't play FF as much as can't find another good FC skeptical.
Yeah, it's, there's always ways. Ian seems unshackled and unstressed because Ian was dealing with this. And we'll never know, and they won't tell us, unless it's in a tell-all biography in like 10 years' time. A lot of the choices in Shadowlands that led to this, I often wonder this, and Ian would never tell me, is like, how much of it did you fight against? Even though you're the game director, game directors are not the final word on a lot of this stuff. And as Ian, who was a former raider himself and all that kind of stuff, is how much did you disagree with? Because it can be like that. How much did you like... Because there's no way Ian, is with his raid background, was okay with the governance system. There's no fucking way. I refuse to believe it. Like, he was like, yeah. Yeah, they got direction from other places. Like, did they know... How early did they know it was doomed? Like, when I spoke to Josh, right, who used to be the community manager, who knew a lot of the features before they came out, he was quite open in telling us, it's like, we all knew this was going to suck. I knew as soon as I was told about it, it was going to suck. And can you imagine what that's like? You're working there, you're making a game. Certainly if you're a community manager and you have to face the public, that's your job. And you're like, oh my God, this fucking sucks. And I just know I have to deal with the fallout of this. Like, it's terrible. Like, I've got to deal with this. And it just fucking blows. And I know this isn't going to work.
In chat are kicking off
Also lots of Morhaime during that time. Well, yeah, there's a lot that happens here. We have all the revelations of what was going on in Blizzard for all the years and removal of all them top staff, people outing. We had work from home. Everybody left the Anaheim office. You know, that's when I went and visited and did all that stuff. But I'll always say it, when I was there, the staff were amazing. The devs I got to meet and the people making the game absolutely loved what they were doing and were obviously making Dragonflight at the time. For WoW, though, isn't it also kind of a double-edged sword to split your player base between so many different versions of the game, and as more and more splits happen, the smaller and smaller communities get? It depends, right? In a very skeptical process, yeah, you can be very worried that you're fragmenting your player base into too many different areas. However, similar to what Grinding Gear have recently said about PoE 1 and 2 in the interviews I had with Jonathan, if, for whatever reason, Season of Discovery does something and the player's like, this is fucking awesome, there's no reason you're not like,
Team
well, that
Chaos,
should be in War Within.
Jam.
And we have the tech and we can make that happen. Or Plunderstorm, for all I know, Plunderstorm is actually designed so they can check out the spectator mode, which works pretty fucking well. And people are already saying, it's like, why is this not in the Race to World First? Why haven't we got access to this resource? It's like, well, we've made it and we can utilize it now. And we can make it work. Is all this tech is moving around. So it's like, hey, we did something really good in retail. That can come down to War Within as well. Or to Season of Discovery, and we can move it all around. It does feel like a console test, especially. There's a lot of positives to, because it'll never be a strict separation, right? It's always Venn diagram. There's always overloading. There'll be some people who'll play. I do it. I've played Dragonflight, Hardcore, and Season of Discovery. The only thing I've not touched is Classic. There'll be people who are like, well, I haven't touched retail, but I've done this, this, and this, and all overlapping between them. They're not trying to get a separation. More realistically, what I see Blizzard is doing here is accepting the fact you cannot create enough content in this world to satiate every gamer in an MMO with a single product. I don't think it's possible without poisoning that product. It's the exact reason we ended up with all the dailies and daily chores and constant grinding, and by the time we hit Shadowlands, is trying to make enough content to satiate millions of players to keep playing our game every single fucking day. When it's better, in fact, to say it's okay if you stop playing this one for a bit instead of us overloading it with bullshit to keep you interesting, and go and play this thing where it's separated. It's safe. If we do something in Season of Discovery, we don't have to do it in Dragonflight. Or we can. It's our choice. But we don't need to just keep pouring bullshit into Dragonflight to keep you interested in what's the next patch? When's the next new thing? It's a way better idea is to be like, we can separate these things out. We can put things over here. And that means it's totally okay. Because the biggest complaint I see right now from Dragonflight, from the people who are pure retail content creators, like my friends who just do retail, is that by the end of the season, they're a little bored. And there's not enough to keep people playing. Like if they're arena players, like the arenas have kind of turned into a bit of a ghost town. Battlegrounds are a bit of a ghost town, blah, 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 blah. But that's because people are kind of okay with going playing something else. And I don't think Blizzard needs to constantly be adding new content every couple of weeks or 3 months or whatever to Dragonflight to keep it interesting. There'll be a point very soon, though, that Classic doesn't pay for itself. Yeah, I wonder what the move is. Season of Discovery is step 1, right? Obviously, you can look at this timeline and see that Season of Discovery is the realization that the Classic gravy train is running out. So what are they going to do next? I don't know. Do they restart Classic again? Do they go back to square one and start it again? I mean, they kind of just did that with Season of Discovery. Because you could argue Season of Discovery is Classic Plus. But it's not really. Like, I see Season of Discovery as a playground. They can't, right? So it's like, well, what do we do next? This gravy train is coming to an end. Mists of Pandaria. And then we're getting into the dubious expansions. Like, I think Mists of Pandaria would be okay. But then we're getting kind of WoD, Legion, or do you start really experimenting with, can we do Cataclysm Plus? Is it worth it to make these different now? What if we do the Burning Classic? They could do whatever the hell they want. They could make some really weird shit if they want to. What is World of Warcraft Classic like if we really, like, went crazy? I don't know. Like, this will be the discussions they've been planning over the next few years is, all right, the Classic Gravy Train's running out. What do we do? Well, let's start with something like Season of Discovery, where we mess around with the abilities and we make the gameplay a bit more fun. And that does very well, but it's seasonal, right? Once you've got your stuff, you move away. WOD Plus with a Shatrath raid. Season of Discovery should go into TBC. It could do. It could do. You could have Season of Discovery to the Burning Crusade. Okay. Could do that as well. And then what do we do for people who want more long-term gameplay? Because seemingly the people on the Classic train, like Lion's a bit like this, right? It's like Classic is a day-to-day game for them. Cataclysm, but with harder dungeons than those on release, which all the molders who can't play break upon Stonecore Heroic. Yeah, I'll see.
I genuinely like to see them go full-on to Classic Plus in the sense that imagine they continue the story as if the Dark Portal never opened. Right?
Alternative timeline stuff is
like,
stuff they could do at any point. Yeah, absolutely. They could.
I think that could be really cool, and that's like a longevity thing, right? I feel like that's the solution if you want to have something that can, in principle, go indefinitely.
I do suspect they don't want to end up in a situation where they're literally making 2 MMOs.
Yeah.
Which is what you'd be talking about there. Because if you did a time divergence, you're essentially... You reuse some of the assets, but essentially things are going to change. And at that point, you are running 2 independent MMOs. I think they do want the majority of the focus to be on War Within and the retail. But if it gets to the point that you're right, it's like, well, do we now have the revenue and resources to actually, instead of making WoW 2, which is a huge project, as we've seen with Riot, right? Like, we've seen this with Riot. It's like, yeah, this is not as easy, and we've already spent hundreds of $millions. It's like, can we just use World of Warcraft Classic and just kind of change it a little bit and go in a different way? Is that cheaper?
I think it would be data-driven, right? Because you'd have to say, okay, to what degree are the audiences for Classic and retail fundamentally different now?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer to that is there's a significant divergence in the millions of players, then there may be enough to justify that.
Maybe. And it's also definitely cheaper for them, although I imagine the devs are like, I do not want to work with this engine anymore, for the love of fucking Christ. Please, can we have a new engine to work with that's not limited by the backpack size, for fuck's sake? Like, can we do that? Magic Gathering went through a similar development. They released more cards every year to support different ways of playing, which led to oversaturation of the core. Players got tired of the endless hype. Yeah, that can happen as well. I don't know what their next move is. I would definitely say they're looking at the Classic Gravy Train ending, and they're planning for that. Whether or not it'll be more stuff like Season of Discovery or more other game modes coming in. But I don't think... I would be amazed if they're not, like, looking at what they've created here with all these different variations of the game, which are definitely working. We can see that literally in the statistical numbers here. And expanding on that in some way. Without going too far. We'll see what we do. What if they rework the talent tree so you don't have 2 overpowered specs and useless ones? I mean, I wouldn't put too much faith in WoW balance. Like, they get it right on occasion. They get it pretty close to right, but... it's not something I would definitely rely on. And ultimately, that stuff is kind of minor in the grand scheme of things. People will play underpowered specs all day, every day if they're just having fun. It's all about gameplay. We'll do. End the Classic servers at Wrath. Well, we're getting Cataclysm for sure. They shut them down. Typical Classic servers have to end at some point. Do they? Nothing with an MMO ever has to end. Like, we've seen Era exists, and not true, there's barely anybody playing it. 100%. But there are people who are playing still just WoW Classic on the Classic Era servers. They're there. They're all playing. They're doing their thing. I have no idea how many people are playing, but they're there. And they're just enjoying the original Classic over and over again. WoW is like a painting that starts in one corner. There's no reason at all to rewatch that was done before. That's something WoW lacks forever. And other games like those did pretty well. They have that vision now. They've obviously realized this and gone back. Let's not remember this. It was only here they said that WoW Classic would never exist. Now they're here. Starting to look a bit like one of them when you find out who makes all the sodas, right? And then you find out like one company has like 90 different brands of soda all under their things. Don't forget, hardcore started in era, and era itself had a great surge of players even before that. Yep. Yeah, very good. Like, they've expanded it. They need to be careful not to go too far. I think if you have, you don't want to fragment the player base into like tens and tens of them. No, we're doing hardcore 60 this year. We're doing solo self-found hardcore at some point this year, which is going to be a really exciting time. Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But I think they might be considering certainly a diversions of timelines of stuff. Get Cromie in. The clock starts spinning. And then it changes again. But that would likely be, if we were to see something like that, it would probably be the next BlizzCon. Because I don't think there's a BlizzCon this year. They've not announced it yet, and we're already in March, so I have to assume it's not. But year after BlizzCon, because that's when Cataclysm would have been out for a while. Season of Discovery will have wrapped up or moved on to the Burning Crusade. War Within will be out. They're not going to show too much about Midnight. So probably next year's BlizzCon will have whatever the plan is going forward.
2 years. Finally.
Because they're not going to get rid of
about 5
Classic.
years of
But what are they going to do with it?
I do disagree though, Mike. They should keep remaking old expansions forever. I can't wait to relive Shadowlands.
Yeah, exactly.
Lol.
Do you think BlizzCon literally takes up so much work hours, cancel things to get work done? The last BlizzCon was not intended to take place. Like by Blizzard. I think after I think the last BlizzCon was done because the Microsoft deal was going through and they wanted to show that strength. And as far as I know, don't quote me on this as an absolute fact, all right? Don't be that guy. But I'm pretty sure the last BlizzCon was kind of organized by Microsoft on behalf of them. It is why there was so many changes going on. So there's no BlizzCon this year. I don't think Blizzard was ready for a BlizzCon. Like, they had very little announcements for Diablo. They had very little announcements for Overwatch. It was basically the World of Warcraft show, right? Let's get Metzen on stage. But it was, I think Microsoft said, we'll put on BlizzCon. You guys kind of need to show up and we'll do the bulk of the work. What will happen next time? My gut feeling is Blizzard wants control over it again because they weren't happy with the way BlizzCon went this year. I don't blame them either. There was a lot of things that... If you went to BlizzCon and you've been to several BlizzCons, you know this year was very different, or last year, as it was. The last BlizzCon was very different, and it was a little weird in places. And they'll probably want to take back control of that. So the next BlizzCon, which should be 2025, I guess, will be on. Yes, we're going to FF13 today, for sure. Yeah. What was wrong with it? It was just... It was presented more like a gaming convention that isn't Blizzard. Blizzard likes to merge all their IPs together. It's very normal when you go to BlizzCon to see Rayner, Jim Rayner stood next to fucking Tracer. They're all part of one in the same world, right? It's the Blizzard universe that they've created, and you'd see all that. This event wasn't like that. It was very strictly segmented off. This is Overwatch. This is fucking Hearthstone. This is this. And it was all like separated out. Essentially, you could walk between them, but essentially they wanted you to come out of Diablo to go into like the Warcraft area, which felt weird. It was like this, and they had these very themed rooms instead of it all being intermingled together. Whoever was running it seemingly had never seen what the Darkmoon Fair is like. Which, obviously, the Blizzard organizers know exactly what the Darkmoon Fair is like, to the point where the fucking Fire Brigade had to come and kick everybody out of the Darkmoon Fair and have them queuing for like 4 hours to go and trade pins. Instead of what Blizzard usually does is give those guys an entire building's floor to deal with just for Darkmoon Fair. Like, you go there and there's thousands of people doing pin trading and all sorts of stuff and having a great weekend just doing that. So yeah, there was a lot of things. Having the opening ceremony in the StarCraft 2 arena, that was so weird because people just couldn't get in. They didn't have enough room for everybody. Whereas usually they just do it on the main stage and people can sit anywhere they want in the whole show and watch it live. And it's not a stress. People aren't stood out in the sun because it's obviously Anaheim. It's baking heat. So you had thousands of people stood in baking fucking heat. Yeah, it was. There was a lot of differences this year, which didn't feel like a seasoned people had done it. They were trying to promote Overwatch 2 since it's all monetized. It's probably why Tracer was next to Raider, not Kerrigan. They might have made people invest the words Tracer or Overwatch to spend money. No, they weren't together. You're not understanding what I'm saying. If you were Lilith, you were not to be seen in the Warcraft area. right? Overwatch people not in the Warcraft area, because it's the Warcraft area. We have Rumble, Hearthstone, World of Warcraft Classic, and Retail all in this one area, and then there's a wall, and then Diablo is over here. And then there's a wall, and Overwatch is over here. That's not how Blizzard does things. They're very happy to have all their characters near each other. So that was odd. It was very, very odd. And then if you wanted to go and do this, it was in a different building and all that. Yeah, they built a wall between it. It was very odd. All right, let me have a pee and then we'll play some games. But really happy for Blizzard, actually. It's working. GG's to Holly. I bet she's getting a fat paycheck at the end of the financial year. I bet Holly is getting a juicy, juicy fucking paycheck, and she deserves it. I recently have looked into 2 RuneScapes. Too many MMOs spoils my dinner, honestly. That's too much time. I would have to... if I was to play all the MMOs that have ever existed, I'd be sat here at like 60 years old. Like, now we're blind testing the original Dragon Man from back in the day. No, not particularly entertaining for my audience or for me, I don't think. So I'll give them a miss. And what's wrong with that? And what's wrong with that? Look, I've got the BBC coming this week to film us, all right? Let's keep it relatively modern. For all I know, we're still going to be playing FF13, and these people are going to show up saying, why are you playing this fucking game from like 20 years ago? I'm like, well, you don't understand. We're on a journey. We're on a journey, you see. We've been started here and doing all this stuff, right? That's enough for me. Right, let me get a drinky drink.